Hey you guys, welcome back to Nia's Nest. Today I'm answering some of your questions over postpartum depression. A lot of you asked, what is postpartum depression? So I looked it up so I could give you a specific definition. Depression suffered by a mother following childbirth, typically arising from the combination of hormonal changes, psychological adjustment to motherhood, and fatigue. First question comes from Jackie R430. Did you have support while dealing with your depression? I had postpartum depression with my second child. I wasn't diagnosed with it, but I was very low and depressive for about 4 to 6 months after giving birth to him. And I didn't have it with my first or my third. Yes, I primarily had support from my mom, my mother-in-law, and my best friend. My husband was working nights. Baby number 2 was a total and complete surprise to us. We weren't trying. We didn't feel like we were ready to have another baby yet. Working nights, he was coming home exhausted, and getting up in the middle of the night with the baby was not really an option for him because I was breastfeeding. And so it was just really confusing and hard on both of us, to be honest. Also, about 2 months after my son was born, we started going to a new church, and the pastor's wife, who is now one of my best friends, she already knew that I had postpartum depression. My mother-in-law had requested prayer for me at a women's meeting or something like that. And so she immediately, the first time we saw each other one-on-one, she embraced me, she prayed over me, and so I definitely had the support of my church community right away, which I cannot say enough. That is like the most important thing. Question number 2 comes from Coleman Clan. Did you have postpartum depression with your miscarriage? I had a healthy baby and had 0 PPD. Actually, I felt radiant. Then I had 2 consecutive miscarriages and felt so depressed. My OB said it could be postpartum depression, but I honestly just thought it was sadness from losing the babies. What are your experiences? My miscarriage came after my second baby, and so I did have a depression, but it wasn't the same as postpartum depression. Like, there's just a different feeling. They both felt like this sinking feeling, but postpartum depression felt more of like a confusion and anxiety and like just totally floating into space over there. Whereas the depression I had after my miscarriage felt like a deep loss and like heavy grieving. And so I don't know that it was postpartum depression. I don't think it was. Okay, so this next question I'm gonna answer is kind of a tough one. And I know that here on my channel, some of you out there will find anything I say and try to twist it into something negative. So I am answering this question for those of you watching who really, really want the answer, or perhaps want to share it with your spouse. Or maybe you feel like something is way off, but it's actually not that off. And so yes, I'm about to just be raw and real because I think it matters. So Jordan Taylor asked, how did Sam support you when you were experiencing postpartum depression? Okay, so as I said earlier, it was kind of hard with his work schedule. I didn't feel super supported because he was just so busy and so exhausted. However, he knew what I was going through. He would sit and talk with me. He would often do cute little gestures before he would leave for work because he was leaving me, you know, overnight alone with the kids and with a very clingy, needy baby. You know, to be honest, I have a lot of friends who have kids, and I've had several of them share with me that during the time when they had postpartum depression, it felt like their husband wasn't on board or didn't really connect or seem to really get it. And I think that, ladies, that is kind of a common thing from what I hear and from what I've experienced. I think it's very common for our men not to get us. If you think about just a random argument you have with your husband in passing, it kind of feels like, does he even know who I am? And so in these deepest, darkest moments where, you know, you're emotional and you don't even know why, I mean, if we don't know why, how can we really expect them to know why? And then how can we also expect them to like support us like a superstar? I guess what I'm trying to say, it's kind of hard for me to get out because I don't want this to be something that some of you twist around into something super negative, is that if you're feeling like your husband doesn't really get what you're going through, I think it's very common. And I think just continuing to share with him, even if he's not getting it, and letting him be a part as intimately as possible with this process of being new parents as you possibly can, is gonna make a big difference. And there can be a lot of things that contribute to that. Having a new baby puts a big halt on your intimate life. it puts a big halt on your emotional like connection with your husband because you're so hormonal. And also there's another new little person that needs you all the time, whereas your husband's kind of used to you being there for him. And you know, it's just a transition that happens during marriage. That kind of ties in with a previous Q&A I did about love and relationships, where it's up to us to communicate to our husbands what we need and not expect them to read our minds. Next question comes from Libby Carpenter 87. How do you feel breastfeeding impacted your postpartum depression? The reason I ask is with my firstborn, I formula fed and didn't suffer from PPD, and this time I'm breastfeeding and I am struggling with PPD. That was the same situation with me. My firstborn was formula fed, she was early and did not latch, and we had all kinds of complications trying to breastfeed her. And I was a little bummed by that, but I didn't feel postpartum depression. I didn't even feel depression. I definitely do think breastfeeding plays a part in postpartum depression. Your hormones are like all over the place when you're breastfeeding. It's just so unknown. It's like, okay, well the baby wants to eat and he just ate an hour ago, but I'm supposed to wait 2 hours and I'm supposed to feed for 15 minutes per side, but now the baby's falling asleep. Crap, I gotta wake the baby up. Let me slap his feet over here. I mean, like, that just took a toll on me. I'm a planner and I like to know what's gonna happen and when it's gonna happen, and all of that up in the air, breastfeeding times and schedules and stuff like that was just throwing me off. I definitely felt like after the baby was about, you know, like 4 to 6 months old, I kind of knew what to expect. I could do things my own way. I didn't have to time my feedings. I didn't have to like spread them out a certain amount of time, and we could do it on our own schedule, and that definitely helped me overcome the emotional like anxiety, confusion part of my postpartum depression. Next question comes from Maddie Aw. Do you find it was harder transitioning from 1 kid to 2 kids or 2 kids to 3 kids? Definitely for me, it was harder going from 1 kid to 2 kids. I don't know why. Some people say it's harder going from 2 to 3 because then the grown-ups are outnumbered, but that wasn't the case for me. Next question comes from JK Curtis. Hey Nia, thank you for doing this video. I'm due with my first baby girl on May 12th. What do you suggest I do to help myself if I start to experience postpartum symptoms after she's born? I'm a single mom, so I already know that things will be tough. I'm so excited to be a mommy though. I hope she's as sweet and adorable as Juliet. Well, thank you. Okay, my suggestions. I have to think about this. Okay, so first, I would suggest do not hold your feelings inside. Talk to someone, your husband, your mom, your best friend, your doctor. Talk to somebody about how you're feeling and really get a handle on what you're feeling. Let yourself be okay with the fact that you're depressed. Let yourself feel these emotions and work through them. If your friends are trying to get you out of the house to go out for dinner, go out with them. If your husband's trying to get a babysitter so that he can take you on a date, go on a date with him. If your mom wants to hold the baby for 4 hours while you take a nap, let her hold that baby. I definitely struggled with making all of those choices. The next thing I would suggest, anytime the baby wakes you up in the middle of the night, or if it's like nap time but he's not napping, or she, I'm saying he because that was my case with my son, I definitely suggest that when you sit down and you start a new feeding, to have some scriptures on hand, some uplifting, encouraging scriptures. I have a few. I'll list the references in case any of you want to turn to them. And you guys can write these down or save them and utilize them whenever you want. Go look them up, make screenshots, highlight in your Bibles. These were definitely so helpful for me during the time of my postpartum depression. Next question comes from Andy Opal. Hey Nia, love you. Love you too. My question, do you feel that PPD affected your relationship with any of your children? I felt like I was a slower bond with my daughter because of my PPD, and we have the best relationship now. That's interesting that you felt like you had a slower bond with that baby, because I felt like it affected my relationship with my firstborn. Like, I was focused so much on the new baby and the new baby's needs. Not that I was ignoring my firstborn, but it was like I suddenly couldn't be one-on-one with her anymore. I couldn't go wherever I wanted and just take her along with me. I couldn't like sit down and do schoolwork with her. We were homeschooling at the time. I couldn't do anything that we were normally used to doing, and if I wanted to do those things, I had to do it while the new baby was sleeping. I would do those things with her during nap time about half of the time, and the other half I would sit down and have some quiet time, sit with her while she watched a movie. And I feel like after about 6 months to a year, when my postpartum started to slow down and really go away, I got that bond back with my firstborn. We became closer again. My hormones were regulating. I wasn't so like snappy about nap time and you have to be quiet because the baby's napping. Next question comes from Budnik Alana. I had postpartum anxiety with my first. and now I'm 29 weeks pregnant with my second. Does it get any better with the second? If not, what techniques have you used that help get through it without being medicated? Well, it's kind of hard to answer that like exactly the way you asked it, because I had it with my second, not with my first, but then I didn't have it with my third. And so I think that for my situation, I did not want to use the medication. My doctor said that if things got worse and I wasn't able to control my mood or to really feel stabilized, that she would prescribe something for me, but I was kind of determined to move past it with prayer and reading scripture on my own. Was that the best decision? I don't really know, but it's what worked for me at the time. But I have friends who have had postpartum depression and they've used medication, and that's been what worked best for them, and I support that and I encourage that for them. So, I mean, really, it's kind of just something that you have to look at your life and look at how you're feeling, talk with your husband, talk with those closest with you, talk with your doctor, and see what you really feel would be the absolute best decision for you and for your family. And if that's medication, then I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Next question comes from Amber Kelly 95. Did PPD ever make it difficult to bond with babies immediately? For me, when I had it with Abram, I didn't get it until like a week or two after he was born, and then it stuck around until he was like 6 to 8 months old. It's just the strangest thing. Some people get it right away. Some people don't even get it until their kids are like 6 months old. It's crazy. I really feel like the fatigue plays a huge part in when you get the postpartum depression too. And last question comes from Lauren Conradi. How did God help you through everything? P.S. Love you guys. Well, basically, I wouldn't have made it through without God. Like I said, those middle of the night feedings, it was just everything to me. Reading those scriptures that I shared with you and praying them over my life and just pleading with God to intervene and to calm my spirit and to like give me hope and give me energy and give me a good attitude and patience and just really like spelling it out and like being vulnerable before the Lord. So I hope I've answered enough questions. I feel like this topic is super heavy and like layered, and that there's a ton more we could say about it, but I also don't want to share too much and overshare. So I hope that this has been encouraging if you're experiencing postpartum depression. I also wanted to quickly share with my third pregnancy, I started praying very early in the pregnancy that I wouldn't get postpartum depression. I just started praying peace and joy into my heart and into my spirit that would flow over into the newborn phase, and it did. And I know that He doesn't give us everything we want. He's not a wish granter, but I pleaded with Him on this, and He blessed me and He granted me with it, and I'm so very grateful, and I encourage you to do the same. If you've had postpartum depression, please share your story. I know it's just YouTube and it's just a comment, but there are some people who are reading and they're terrified of sharing their story. They're terrified of letting people know that they have this weakness, and I think it's just really important to bring it to the light and to let others know that they're not alone. So anyways, guys, I'll be back next week with more stuff to talk about. What do you guys want to hear about next? Let me know that in the comments below too. I will see you guys next week. Thanks for hanging out. Bye!